Emily Thompson quietly ascended the worn stairs of her home, a Victorian mansion on the outskirts of Boston. The 80-year-old house was her very life. Touching the familiar wooden banister she had known since childhood was as if she could feel the warmth of her parents. This 4,000-square-foot house meant more to her than just a building. Stroking her soft, chestnut-brown hair, Emily wore her usual discreet navy suit, befitting her role as a senior accountant at a large accounting firm, earning $85,000 a year. Her preference for modest attire hadn't changed since her college days, even at 32. The memories in this house were still vivid. The sunset streaming through the stained glass windows always reminded her of her mother's gentle smile. In the spacious garden, the roses she had planted with her father still bloomed proudly. Spending holidays tending the garden and cooking family recipes learned from her mother were her greatest pleasures. "I'm home." The chilly air greeted her as she opened the front door after long hours at the major accounting firm. She returned home at 6 p.m. Her once warm family home now showed a different face. The annual property tax of $20,000, once shared by the family, now fell solely on her shoulders. "Oh, Emily, working late again?" Her mother-in-law, Patricia, peered from the living room, elegantly dressed. Her perfect makeup and expensive jewelry sparkled. A former private school teacher, she now devoted herself to the bridge club twice a week and social activities. Since losing her husband 10 years ago, she has been living comfortably on a generous life insurance policy. Her gaze always held a subtle aversion for Emily. "Welcome." Her sister-in-law Rachel's voice echoed from the second floor. She called herself a beauty influencer with 20,000 followers on social media, but in reality, she was unemployed. Her lavish monthly expenses of $5,000 were fully covered by her brother Michael's monthly allowances of $33,000. Her credit card debt had already exceeded $330,000. Emily silently headed to the kitchen. Married for 3 years with no children, the last 6 months living with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law had completely changed the atmosphere of the house. Her husband, Michael, a successful architect who ran his design firm and earned over $150,000 a year, had recently become increasingly interested in real estate development and was coming home later and later. Known as a stylish businessman, her husband loved expensive watches and maintained a superficially chivalrous demeanor. However, lately, his attitude toward his wife had become increasingly cold, while his excessive fondness for his sister was obvious to everyone around them. While preparing dinner, Emily checked her mobile phone. There was a message from her true brother, James, a partner at a major Boston law firm. Her brother was also the sole arbiter of their parents' will. Known as an astute lawyer who earned over $300,000 a year, he was also an expert in real estate law. "How are you? I'll call you this weekend." The brief message comforted her a little. Her intelligent and reliable brother had been calling without fail every week since her parents passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. His kindness toward his sister was unwavering, even in these tight calls between his busy work schedule. From the kitchen window, she could see the rose garden. This house, worth $2 million on the market, was an iconic presence in the exclusive neighborhood. However, recently, a wave of redevelopment has been sweeping through the neighborhood, with old mansions disappearing one after another, replaced by newly built condominiums. Property values were rising sharply, attracting the attention of developers. After finishing the dinner preparations, Emily sat alone at the dining table. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law said they would eat in their rooms. A message from Michael indicated that he would be late again tonight. The dining table, once filled with family smiles, now belonged only to her. The next day, she would quietly take care of household chores alone and head to work at 7:30 in the morning. Even on holidays, her days were consumed by household tasks. How long would this routine continue? Although known for her gentle temperament and patience, a silent anxiety had lately begun to grow in her heart. Outside the window, the afternoon breeze gently swayed the rose petals. The promise to her parents to protect this house still resonated silently in her heart. Tonight, it was both her will and a promise to her brother. However, recently, fulfilling that promise seemed to be increasingly difficult. At 8 a.m. on a holiday morning, Emily was already in the kitchen. Today was her mother-in-law Patricia's birthday. To prepare a meal worthy of this special day, she carefully selected the finest ingredients from the market the day before. Changed into a new, elegant navy dress, Emily worked efficiently in the large kitchen. In the dining room, illuminated by a crystal chandelier, centerpieces with fresh flowers were already placed, and the antique tableware was beautifully arranged. Her mother-in-law's roast beef turned out perfect. Emily nodded with satisfaction as she checked it. She had carefully chosen the menu, taking into account her mother-in-law's preferences. The appetizer was lobster bisque, followed by roast beef, grilled seasonal vegetables, and a specially ordered birthday cake. She had prepared an expensive Bordeaux wine. I'm hungry. Near noon, Rachel appeared in the kitchen, dressed in the latest fashion with perfect makeup. She took a drink from the refrigerator and said, "But I'm meeting friends for tea later, so I'll just have something light." Emily said nothing in response. She was already accustomed to her indifferent attitude toward the meals she had spent an entire day preparing. Well, aren't you quite the cook?" Patricia came to check things, casting a condescending glance as she said, "But it's okay, the seasoning. You know my preferences." Emily simply smiled silently, despite having asked and studied her mother-in-law's preferences countless times. At 6 p.m., the party began under the crystal chandelier. The silver cutlery glittered on the antique table. Michael came directly from work, Patricia was dressed in a new dress, and Rachel arrived after shopping with friends. As the family gathered one by one, that moment arrived, the chairs. Emily looked around the table and sensed something was wrong. 6 chairs, 7 place settings. Are there enough seats for everyone, right? Rachel said with a malicious smile, her eyes not even trying to hide her obvious hostility. "Oh, Emily, why don't you eat in the kitchen? You must be busy, right?" Patricia said with an elegant smile, her voice dripping with cruel triumph. Michael sat in silence, his expensive watch coldly reflecting the light of the chandelier. The atmosphere in the room froze. The family members had confused expressions. Rachel seemed satisfied, maintaining her artificial smile, and her husband maintained an attitude of indifference as if it were someone else's problem. Emily slowly straightened her back. Known for her gentle temperament, at this moment, her eyes held a strong will. "It seems I'm not considered family." "Excuse me," Emily said in a low but firm voice. There was a strange strength in her voice. Back in her room, Emily immediately grabbed her mobile phone. She briefly explained the situation to her brother James, including everything that had happened so far. "This might be my limit." "I understand. I'm coming there right now. Wait for me." Her brother's voice mixed anger with his usual calmness. The party continued, as usual, the family members chatting in a celebratory atmosphere, preparing for the birthday cake. No one imagined that this glamorous gathering would soon be disrupted. An hour and a half later, the doorbell rang. When James appeared, the party venue fell silent. Dressed in an expensive suit, he held what appeared to be a heavy briefcase full of documents in his hand. The light of the crystal chandelier coldly illuminated the documents in James's hands. Known as a lawyer, his expression lacked his usual calmness. From the moment he learned of his sister's betrayal, his eyes had harbored flames of anger. His experience in handling numerous real estate lawsuits as a partner at a downtown law firm was about to be used to protect his sister. The documents were spread one after another on the antique table, confidential agreements with real estate development companies, printed emails, bank transaction records, and detailed architectural plans. All told the story of this family's betrayal. The mountain of documents cast shadows on the table like accumulated lies. First, this is a copy of the contract signed last month. James took out a document. The contract date was a month ago. The contract amount was $500,000. The planned construction was 20 luxury condominiums. The projected sales price for each unit was $1.5 million. Total projected sales would reach $30 million. In this large-scale project, the secret agreement with the developers also promised priority orders for Michael's design firm, revealing the full extent of the secret deals. And this is the record of the contract payment already made. $500,000 has already been transferred from the developer to Michael's account. The bank statement projected a dim light on the table. The transaction date, the name of the sender, and the amount were highlighted with a red marker. Wait, I can explain it. This was for the office's operating funds. Michael's voice trembled. His hand with the expensive watch also trembled slightly. His usual self-assured demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his face turned ashen. Well, all this was thought of the family, for a new life adapted to modern times. Patricia tried to smooth things over, but her voice had already lost its strength. Her new dress now only highlighted her anxiety. Her ringed fingers trembled slightly, and her true age began to show through her perfect makeup. Older brother, what about the promised new apartment? My share. You promised me the corner unit on the 5th floor. Rachel screamed in a panic. Her voice contained no trace of her previous arrogance. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her smartphone. Her newest designer handbag fell to the floor. Rachel, shut up. Michael tried to stop his sister, but it was already too late. The details of the secret agreement were being revealed one after another. The promise of the top floor of the new building to his sister's family, the promise of $20,000 of monthly expenses for Patricia, and the fact that it had all been pushed forward by concealing it from Emily was exposed to the light of day. The secret agreement with the developers, the family profit-sharing plan, and the circumstances of Emily's exclusion were all clear. Furthermore, it has been discovered that this plan had been in preparation for over 6 months. James's voice became even more severe. He placed a new stack of documents on the desk, email histories, meeting minutes, bank account opening records. The evidence was perfectly assembled. However, everyone made a critical oversight. He took out a new document, the will of their parents. This solemn document had already been certified by the court. This will contain special provisions. It is as if our parents had foreseen this type of situation at that time. Tears glistened in Emily's eyes. Her parents' final love was trying to protect her. First, there is a clause that requires Emily's consent. This means that any sale or renovation cannot be executed without Emily's written consent. Second, there is a restraint on sale clause. This stipulates that the property cannot be sold for 20 years without special circumstances. Third, there are provisions for penalty violations. These include the possibility of criminal charges in addition to civil ones. And fourth, there is a joint management requirement between siblings. Any important decisions regarding this house require an agreement between Emily and me. James slowly read each clause. Each word changed the color of the faces of those who had conspired against them. The document, full of legal terminology, completely shattered their plans. These provisions have full binding legal power under real estate law. In case of violation, you could be subject to criminal charges, particularly concerning the contract money already received. I consider that there is an extremely high possibility that you meet the constituent requirements of fraud. Surely, you don't intend to press charges? Patricia's expression changed drastically. The blood abandoned the face of the woman who prided herself on being a flower of society. Her elegant afternoons at the bridge club twice a week would now come to an end. Emily, can't we resolve this through discussion? We're husband and wife, aren't we? Michael pleaded with his wife. However, his eyes were not fixed on his wife, but on his uncertain future. It was clear that his reputation as an architect would be ruined by this incident. It's too late. Emily's voice was surprisingly calm. Her attachment to the house inherited from her parents and all her efforts dedicated until now gave her strength. Although known for her gentle temperament and patience, her expression now had a firm determination. The preparations for the lawsuit are already complete. The defendants will be Michael Thompson, Patricia Thompson, Rachel Thompson, and the development company, James continued. Over the desk lay the complaint that had already been prepared. We are also considering reporting this to the police, particularly concerning the flow of contract money. The investigating authorities will show great interest, including suspicions of money laundering. Asset preservation procedures have already begun. The atmosphere of the room became even heavier. The decorations for the birthday party now had an ironic tone. And finally, my last warning, James stood up. His presence was exactly that of a formidable lawyer. Each word of his, earning over $300,000 a year, had weight. If there are more illegal acts, we will take immediate legal action. Please vacate this house within 24 hours. Your belongings will be sorted later under my supervision. Those words were the final blow. Patricia slumped into her chair. Rachel burst into tears, and Michael stood there dumbfounded. This is how the glamorous birthday party ended. On the table, the untouched plates remained. The roast beef, the lobster bisque, the grilled seasonal vegetables that Emily had prepared with so much care, and the specially ordered birthday cake, silently maintaining their splendor without ever having been cut. The expensive Bordeaux wine cooled on the table, its cork never opened. Emily was standing by the window, looking at the rose garden. She had managed to protect this precious place that had been left to her by her parents. The afternoon breeze gently caressed her cheek. It was as if her parents were encouraging her. Her reflection in the window glass seemed a little stronger than before. This could be the beginning of a new life. At the moment she thought this, a small light of hope lit up in her heart. In a conference room of a major Boston law firm, Emily was sitting in front of James. The morning sun streaming through the large windows illuminated the divorce papers scattered on the desk. 2 weeks after the revelation, her life had begun to move in a great direction. This is the final proposal for the division of assets. Emily's voice had become stronger than before. While her gentle temperament had not changed, she now had a solid core of strength. The documents on the desk detailed a complete list of assets. Michael's treachery appeared to have been deeper than we imagined. James took out a new stack of documents. They contained evidence of Michael's past fraudulent transactions, inflated billing on development projects, secret agreements with clients, and even suspicion of tax evasion. Behind his brilliant career as an architect, he had committed numerous illegal acts. We've confirmed that in the last 3 years alone, we have found 5 cases of fraud. Anger seeped into James's voice. The evidence appeared one after another on the desktop computer, emails of complaints from clients, records of suspicious deposits, and falsified design drawings. All told the true nature of Michael. Meanwhile, the neighborhood had changed significantly. This incident had become the most important topic in the luxurious residential area. Patricia's position in society had completely changed. Naturally, she stopped attending the bridge club twice a week. The elegant afternoons of the past would never return. New facts about Patricia's past have also come to light, James continued, his explanation while operating a tablet. The screen showed a newspaper article from 10 years ago, an article about suspicions surrounding Patricia's inheritance from her previous husband, suspicious insurance payments, conflicts with other family members, and numerous financial problems. This incident certainly wasn't her first case. My mother-in-law was always this type of person. Emily's voice conveyed resignation rather than sadness. The elegant life in a luxury apartment, the brilliant reputation in society, perhaps it had all been to show off. The impact had also reached Michael's architecture studio. Major clients canceled one after another, and new projects declined sharply. Employees continued to resign, and the office fell into a difficult state to maintain. His expensive watch was pawned, and his elegant suits became increasingly tattered. Brother, what about Rachel, too? The materials that Emily delivered contained surprising content, false advertising on social media, the sale of counterfeit branded goods, and multiple credit card frauds. The glamorous life she transmitted to her 20,000 followers was built on lies. The total debt far exceeds our initial estimates, James continued his explanation with naturalness. Rachel's debts had already exceeded $1 million, exceeding the limits of credit cards, borrowing from loan sharks, and money from compensation for sales of fraudulent products. Bankruptcy was inevitable. The local media widely reported on this incident. The family collapse of a prominent architect and real estate fraud shakes the exclusive neighborhood. The spread on social media was instantaneous, becoming a major topic in the architectural industry. Criticism from developers rained down, and job opportunities for Michael disappeared completely. The court has also issued an asset preservation order. James took out a new official document. Michael and his group's assets were frozen, and their travels abroad were restricted, a heavy document announcing the end of his glamorous lifestyle. Meanwhile, different developments had begun at Emily's family home. The 80-year-old Victorian mansion had found a new value. The procedures for the designation of historical buildings were progressing, and its evaluation as a neighborhood landmark was increasing. It is becoming a model case for home preservation efforts, James happily reported. The support of residents was strong, and it was attracting the interest of younger generations. The precious place inherited from her parents was gaining new brilliance in a different form. There is one more thing to report. James took out the final document, a restraining order against Michael and the others. This would prevent them from approaching Emily or the house. It was an important step that marked the beginning of a new life. Silent tears glistened in Emily's eyes. However, these were not signs of weakness. They were proof of her determination and strength for her new life. Outside the window, the streets of Boston were full of vitality. Emily stood up and took a deep breath. In her expression illuminated by the morning sun, there was no longer any doubt. She would move forward with her life, using her strength. That determination shone strongly in her eyes. Before leaving the conference room, Emily picked up a photograph from the desk, an old family photo with her parents. She nodded slightly to the softly smiling faces of her parents. What true family ties mean, she had already found that answer. A year later, the spring sunlight streamed into the old Victorian house on the outskirts of Boston. Emily reflected quietly on the past days while tending to the roses in the garden. This year she seemed to see more flowers than last year. She smiled as she touched the rosebuds. The rose garden inherited from her parents had now become a local attraction. It was not uncommon for the children in the neighborhood to visit her for tours. "Emily, the coffee is ready." A voice called from the kitchen. It was her new friend Sarah. They had met through the local society for the preservation of historical buildings and now often visited the house on weekends. "Thanks, I'll be right there." Emily took off her gardening gloves and shook off the dirt. In a corner of the garden was a newly installed bench. She had suggested placing it there to serve as an element of the community garden. "The atmosphere of this house is wonderful," Sarah said as she offered coffee. A homemade lemon cake was also placed on the antique table on the terrace. Emily had been gradually reviving the precious recipes of her mother. "Hey, how is that book idea going?" At Sarah's question, Emily smiled shyly. Recently, she had begun to write a book on the preservation and revitalization of historical houses. "It is progressing little by little. I want a lot of people to understand the value of old houses." Her words conveyed a sense of certainty. Work was also going well. She had been promoted to head of department in the accounting firm with a significant salary increase. More than anything, her attitude to work had changed. Her previously reserved demeanor had faded, replaced by the confidence to make proposals. Her mobile phone rang, showing the name of her brother. "Emily, do you have time this afternoon?" James's voice was full of his usual kindness. The bond between the brothers had deepened even further during this year. They made sure to have a family dinner at least once a month, appreciating the time to share their lives. "Yes, of course. I'll have tea prepared for you today, too." After hanging up, Emily looked up at the sky. Spring clouds floated silently. Meanwhile, the former family members were following their paths. Michael had his architect's license temporarily suspended and worked as a design assistant in a small town. Having lost his expensive suits and watches, he lived a modest life. All his former glamorous connections had been lost. Patricia had been completely expelled from society and had developed depression. She had given up her luxury apartment and lived quietly in a suburban nursing home. The weekend bridge club and the elegant tea parties would never return. Rachel had gone through a bankruptcy process and worked as a shop assistant in a clothing store in a provincial town. Her social media accounts were deleted. Her 20,000 followers were gone. The luxurious life had faded like a dream, and she spent her days looking for debt repayment. But they are all still alive, Emily whispered. She no longer felt hate or anger. She had learned firsthand that life always brings consequences. The renovations of the house were also progressing constantly. Modern facilities were being carefully installed while preserving the historical value. The old wooden stairs were meticulously repaired, and the stained glass windows were restored by specialists. The house breathed new life, gaining a renewed glow. In about an hour, the children will come for their tour, Sarah said as she looked at the clock. Recently, the house had been chosen as a field trip destination for local elementary schools. A new role had emerged, teaching children the importance of history. Thanks to Emily, this neighborhood has also changed. The changes were visible in the urban landscape. The uncontrolled redevelopment had decreased, and urban planning using old buildings was being promoted. Emily's house had become a symbol of this movement. Perhaps what changed was me, Emily replied softly. While her soft and modest personality remained unchanged, she had acquired inner strength. The experience of successfully protecting the house inherited from her parents had given her great confidence. At dusk, Emily spoke to the photograph of her parents. "I'm happy, Mom and Dad. In this house, I found a new form of family." Her parents in the photograph smiled gently. Outside the window, the spring breeze whispered silently through the rose petals. Tomorrow, the warm sunlight would also stream into this house. Emily was standing by the window, watching the sunset. This could be true happiness. Although the form of the family may change, what is truly important always remains in the heart, the gratitude towards her parents that helped her realize this, and the hope for her new life filled her heart silently.